All right. So again, welcome to today's session, an ex-corporate professional turned wellness advocate, a lived experience perspective. I am excited to announce our phenomenal facilitator for today. Our facilitator for Nieisha is the speaker, founder of PureSpark, and it is Massachusetts' first wellness directory for people of color. You will receive this slide deck with her contact information in it, and I will pause here and turn it over to you, Nieisha, to welcome you to this space. Thank you again for saying yes and allow you to introduce yourself to the people. So I will stop sharing my screen and I will spotlight you for everyone.
All
There we
right.
go.
Can everyone hear me okay? I just want to make sure because, okay, I see a head
Yeah.
nodding, so that's a good sign, and I see a yes in the chat box. And I'm just so happy to be here today. I was talking to um Dr. Tanisha earlier about this is my favorite type of work to do, being able to share my story. I've always been a person that loved to talk, which is kind of funny because I don't know how I ended up in accounting. Actually, yes, I did, and I'll share that with you all. But it's a pleasure and an honor to be doing this type of work. And to see so many people in the room that are interested in hearing about my story and hearing about the wisdom that I've learned. I'm so thankful that you're here. So I don't have a deck to share. I oftentimes don't have decks. I just speak honestly from my heart. Um, and hopefully you get something out of it that um maybe you can share with the people in your community, you can share with the people at your jobs, you can share with your clients. I just hope that it's valuable to you. So I see everybody's here from all over the place. I am actually from Boston, Massachusetts. It is currently snowing out here, our second snowstorm of the year, which is very odd for Boston. We have about maybe, I don't know, less than an inch on the ground. What's fallen has just melted away, but this is home for me. And I grew up in Boston, but I didn't go to Boston public schools. I always like to share this simple fact with people because it's interesting about how it plays a role in my life. And I should stop here and just say how I'm gonna share my story. So firstly, I'm gonna share about how I grew up. Um, and then I'm going to share a little bit about my college experience. I'm going to share some of the things that happened after college. And then I'm going to start to talk about the work that I got into with PureSpark, and kind of what we're planning on doing in the future. And then I definitely want to be able to open it up and allow people to engage because I feel like sometimes this is so one-sided. I hate one-sided conversations. I like to hear what you're thinking and what you're feeling. So feel free to also use the comment section to ask questions. Hopefully we can capture that so that I can actually respond. And so that's how this is gonna flow. Is that okay with y'all? Y'all good with that? Hopefully that works for y'all. Okay, good. I see some head nods. That's a good sign. Okay. Um, so yeah, born and raised in Boston, and before I was even born, it was decided that I was not going to go to Boston public schools. Why? Because Boston public schools were not the best. And I guess that's typical, right, of a lot of inner city schools. And the suburban towns, maybe an hour outside of Boston, they had better schools, particularly my school, Sharon. Um, my school was ranked when I was there in the 90s, early 2000s, was ranked in the top 10. So my parents decided before I was even born, right, that that's where I was going to go. My oldest sister, who was 10 years older than me, went there. My middle sister, who was a year and a half older than me, went there. I had a cousin who was in a similar program um, out at another school. And it was just really, really important to my parents and my family for us to have a good education because what a good education meant success, right? And so here I am, 6 years old. It's dark outside. It's 6 o'clock in the morning, and I'm getting on a bus to go an hour outside of my city limits to this school. I'm leaving my friends that live on my street. I'm leaving, familiar surroundings. And I'm promised and I'm told that, hey, this is good for you. This is what you need to do. This is going to give you a plethora of opportunities in the future. So this is the right thing to do. But when I got there, I just felt so disoriented. Like, where am I? Um, Firstly, as a young Black child, I don't see many people that look like me. you know I don't have any teachers that look like me. And I feel out of place. But this was my education that I had no other choice, and that's where I stayed from first grade to 12th grade. And eventually that discomfort, I just swallowed it, and I just kind of like dealt with it, right? Like, hey, this is going to be what you have to deal with. Figure out a way to deal with it. Your sisters dealt with it. They're not complaining, so why should you? Um, and so when I graduated, I made a very intentional decision to go to an HBCU. Are people familiar with HBCUs and what that stands for? Okay, so that's historically Black college and university. So I decided that I wanted to be around all Black people. I wanted a totally different experience. So I decided to attend Howard University in Washington, D.C. And instantly, I had the total opposite feeling of like disoriented, but I felt at home. Like, I felt at home outside of Boston, which I didn't even think I could do that. Like, how is that even possible for me to feel at home in a place that was, miles and miles away from where I lived? And I realized that I felt at home because I saw people that looked like me for the first time. I had my first Black teacher ever. I was like, oh my gosh. I wasn't the only Black student in the class. I'm like, oh my gosh, this feels like family. This feels like home. I can let my guard down for the first time. I can have fun. I could feel like, I can do things and not have to worry about people looking at me in a certain kind of way. I can just experience life in this whole new way, right? And it was so beautiful. I loved it. I loved my HBCU experience, and I'm so thankful that HBCUs still exist to this day. Um, and so obviously, that's not how life was going to be forever. And eventually I would have to go off and, find a job. And I remember, trying to figure out, okay, well, what career path am I going to go into? And this was, gosh, it's been almost 20 years since I graduated college. This was 2004, and my friends were persuading me to go into the accounting profession. I was already in the school of business. I was, majoring in management. And my friends that were in accounting was like, oh no, you need to come over here to accounting. Like, this is where it's at. You're going to have a good job, great pay. Um, and right before I graduated in 2005, it was the Enron Anderson scandal. And so everybody was kind of unsure about, like, okay, well, is this a stable profession to go into? It was, but because of Sarbanes-Oxley, it now meant that there was going to be so much more work to do in the accounting profession, which was already a very competitive, high demand profession. So I got the offer letter. I went to Deloitte and Touche, which was and probably still is one of the top accounting firms in the country and the world. And I got there and I instantly felt again like that child, that 6-year-old girl going to her first day in a suburban school, hour outside of where she lived. Again, I'm looking around, not too many people that look like me, not too many people that had the same lived experience as me. Again, feeling like an outsider. So, you go from feeling like an outsider to feeling whole and like a human and connected with people, feeling like you belong, then to feeling like an outsider again. And so I didn't realize it then, but I was definitely depressed, and trying to figure out, well, how do I get that feeling of connectedness back? Um, and so, I stuck around. I stayed with the profession for 15 years. And that shocks a lot of people, but I stayed with it for a number of reasons. I was able to pay off my student loans. My family was so proud. I mean, they were so proud of me. I was able to help my family out a lot financially, and I was on my way to like living that American dream, about to purchase a home, was taking lots of trips, on social media. I had the life, right? But internally I was struggling. And I was struggling for a lot of reasons. I felt like, why should I not be happy? Like, these are the things that I work so hard for. These are the things that I study for. These are the things that, my family, prayed for and wanted for me. But I wasn't happy. I was so disconnected from the work that I was doing. Like, no amount of money was going to satisfy that discontentment, if that makes sense. I was drilled in my head that money was the answer to everything. So I was really legitimately confused, because I'm like, well, I have money. So why am I not happy? I'm taking these trips. Why am I not happy? You know, uh, Capitalism. Why am I not happy? Right. And I think, looking back, obviously, on that experience, hindsight is 2020. I wasn't happy for a lot of reasons. First of all, I worked so much, so hard, so many hours. I didn't have a lot of time to really enjoy life. I didn't feel connected to the work that I was doing, right? It just was work for the sake of doing work. It was endless amount of work. It was like making donuts all day long. Not necessarily. I'm looking at budgets and financial statements and all of these different things, but I didn't feel like the work that I was doing really mattered in the grand scheme of things. I was just making certain people richer and just watching their money, right? Um, and so I felt really disconnected to that. I also felt, I think this was a big thing, I also felt like I couldn't show up as Nieisha Deed, like the real Nieisha Deed. I couldn't bring her to work, right? And so from the first day I went into the profession until the day that I left, I, kind of put on a mask. And so I presented myself one way at work, but that wasn't really me. I was presenting somebody so that I could be safe. I was presenting myself because I knew that, I was a 6'2", still six. I am still 6'2", what not was, still am. I'm a 6'2" Black woman with natural hair that likes to dress in bright colors and nice earrings. And I knew that, you know, um, people perceive me in a certain way. They've actually stated that they perceive me in a certain way. So I was always trying to edit myself, which took a lot of energy. I didn't realize how much energy that took, but I was always trying to edit myself. Okay, well, how do I make myself seem non-threatening, and how do I do this? And it became exhausting. It was exhausting. And then I was also confused. I didn't know, after doing so much editing and masking and acting at work, I forgot, I didn't know who I was. At that point, I'm sitting here, in my early 30s, having a crisis of identity crisis of like, who am I? Um, and so, all of these things, I think, brought me to that point of burnout. It brought me to that point of desperation, because I'm trying to grasp and figure out, what are the answers? Where do I go? Everybody seems to have it figured out, but me, like, I feel lost. I feel helpless. What do I do? And, I got to a point of desperation. I got to a point of um, catatonia. If you all know what that is, I'm sure I've seen some licensed therapists and clinicians. So I'm thinking I'm talking to the right crowd here when I say catatonia. But catatonia is basically when you are completely disconnected from reality, right? And so for me, as this 30 something year old woman, who just thought that catatonia, or that look of catatonia, was only induced by substances, I was confused on how is this happening to me? And now I'm feeling guilty and ashamed that I'm in this position. I'm feeling worthless that I'm in this position. And so, having mental health concerns when you're an educated person in America, um, and you're trying to intellectualize all these things, eventually made it worse, right? Like, I'm supposed to be better than this, right? And so eventually I got to a point in December of 2017, you know, not long before Christmas, that I decided, hey, you know what? I don't want to do this anymore. I'm done. I cannot figure life out. Um, this is too hard. I'm exhausted. I don't have the answers. No one else has the answers. Um, and I'm broken, and I don't think I can be fixed. And so I wrote a note to my family telling them that, hey, listen, the money's here. That's plenty to bury me. I'm sorry. I'm not worth it. Da da da. All these things that, sometimes depression can flow into your head with, and thoughts. And I was living in Maryland, up in this area called Silver Spring at the time. And I just made that choice, and I had made that decision, and I had figured out a way that I wanted to do it. And then the next day, at my door was a police officer. And he said, hey, your family is concerned about you. And I should pause here and say that during this whole time of me struggling, especially during the December month, I was really struggling, really mainly from October to December. And my family was constantly reaching out, checking in on me. Although I didn't tell them what was going on, they had a sense, and the people that care about you and they're close to you, they know. I could hide it from my coworkers and people I work with, but my family, no, no, no. They knew the truth. Okay. And they were calling and checking on me consistently and constantly, um, for 2 to 3 months. And so, um, the day that my family did not hear from me and I didn't call them back was the day that my family had called, Montgomery County, police, and did a wellness check. My sister's a nurse, my cousin's a doctor. I have several cousins that are therapists, so they kind of know. Thankfully, they know what to do, in certain situations. And so the police was at my door. And, I'm like, oh boy. And they say, hey, your family is concerned about you and they think you need help. Are you okay? And I tried to lie, and they're like looking around and they're like, no, we don't think that's true. You need to come to the hospital. And so that was kind of the first day of my healing journey. And I knew I needed help, right? But I was scared, I was afraid, and also I was very adamant on not being here anymore because I thought, what else is there? You know, this is what I went to school for, this is what I studied. If I can't do this and I'm in this situation, like, there's no point in me living. I had connected so much of myself and identity to the work that I was doing that if I couldn't do the work, what was the point of me living? That's a dangerous place to be. Um, and so I got to the point where, they took me to the hospital. My sister and my cousin drove down from Connecticut and Boston, respectively, and they were there. My sister actually stayed and visited me, through my 2.5 week stay at an inpatient hospital, in Montgomery County. And even on Christmas Eve and Christmas Day, like, my sister was right there. And it was hard. It was hard because, um, I think it was the ending of something and also the beginning of something, and change is difficult. It's scary because you don't know what's on the other side, right? And I got to a point where obviously I was released, and then I went to stay with family in Connecticut. And while I was in Connecticut, I was still doing kind of some um uh therapy, but it was not like inpatient, it was outpatient, but I was going to like group therapy every day. And then eventually moving back home to Boston, where I kind of got to the point where I was able to see a therapist on a weekly basis. And then my disability, or short-term disability through my work, was about to end, and I had to kind of decide, okay, am I returning back to corporate America, or what am I doing? Like, what is life right now? It's had been a year, and it was time for me to kind of make that decision. And I kind of look at it like a divorce, like I'm divorcing this life that I thought I was going to live, and going into the unknown. And so I called my employer and I told them, like, hey, I'm not going to be able to come back. Like, this almost took my life, and I don't want to do accounting anymore. And it was scary because at that time I didn't know what I was going to do, but I just knew I wasn't going to do accounting, and that, the most important thing for me to do was to focus on myself and to focus on my journey and start there, and then everything else would kind of fall into place. Um, Thankfully, I have and still do have an amazing support system. And so through all this, I've been supported. Um, and so I think it made it a little bit easier. I didn't have to rush and make certain decisions because I had a lot of love and support. Um, and during that time, I decided, maybe I'm going to do something in wellness. Let me go ahead and Google some places, and maybe I can, go into wellness of some sort. And I guess it was the summer of 2018, the beginning of 2019, I had lost my fourth family member to suicide. And at that point, I got like super angry, because this thing, mental illness, not only came for me, but it was coming for my family members. And it also came for my friend's brother, right? He died by suicide as well. And so I just really like started researching, okay, like what can I do in mental health? Like how can I support my community? And my mom sent me an email from McLean Hospital. I'm not sure if you know McLean Hospital. McLean Hospital is a hospital where actually my sister, who lives with bipolar disorder, which is also the diagnosis that I have. Hers is a lot more severe than mine. She's currently there going through treatment. But my mom had sent me an email from McLean Hospital, and she said, hey, they're doing some work around removing the stigma in the Black community. And I really think you should share your story, Nieisha. You've come a long way. You're doing so much better. Maybe, you sharing your story can inspire somebody else. And so I'm like, I don't know if I'm going to do this. I don't know if I want people to know what happened. At this point, I was like, only sharing this with my family and close friends. Um, and then that situation happened, where my cousin passed away from suicide. And I decided, you know what? Maybe I should open up more. Maybe I should open up beyond just the family members that I told and tell my entire family, because apparently this is something I think that it's genetic to a certain degree. And unfortunately, it's on both sides of my family. And so I did it. I did an interview. You can research it. You can find it. McLean Hospital, Nieisha Deed. And it was cathartic. I was able to kind of open up in a way that I hadn't been able to open up before. And I took the next step of sharing it on social media. I put it on Facebook. And I remember the day I did it. I was at my sister's house in Cambridge, and I was in her kitchen, and I'm over here like, okay, I'm going to do this. I'm just randomly going to post it on Facebook. Um, and I ran to the bathroom and I just cried like of relief, like, oh, I don't have to hide this anymore. And I went back to my laptop, and the amount of messages and the amount of comments and, people in my DMs saying like, oh my God, you're so brave, or I had no idea you went through this. How come you never told me anything? Because, Facebook was a place where the actor Nieisha lived, right? It's where the perfect Nieisha lived. It was where, all the pictures from my trip, in early 2017 to Trinidad lived, and the happy Nieisha, where a lot of people knew me as that, but they didn't know the darkness and the sadness. And so it felt very, very liberating to open up and to share it in such a big way. And from that experience of sharing it on social media and sharing it with, friends and extended friends and people, talking to me in my DM, I had decided, you know what? I'm going to create my own thing, right? And this was right before the pandemic, okay? And I just decided that I was going to talk about certain things in wellness. And I was going to talk about, um, the things that impacted me. And I was going to talk about depression, right? And I think it was kind of a big deal because I didn't see at the time a lot of people that look like me talking about this stuff, right? And talking about it not from an academic side, but from a lived experience perspective, right? Like, I'm gonna tell you exactly what depression feels like. Okay, you have no feelings whatsoever. You feel completely empty. It's like an empty glass of water just sitting there, like nothing's there. Um, and there were so many people that um I think appreciated that honesty and that realness and that candor, um, and that side of me that wasn't really showing before. And then the pandemic hits, and I decided that I was going to start doing conversations kind of like this, on a platform that we call Peer Support by PureSpark. And it was a space that we met, every Wednesday, at I think it was either 6 o'clock or 7 o'clock for about an hour. And we brought licensed psychologists, therapists, clinicians, and other wellness practitioners like nutritionists, yoga teachers, meditation guides, people who really cared about the community and wanted to help them along on their wellness journey. And then from that came, what we have today, which is our website, which is www.yourpurespark.com, which is Massachusetts' first Black wellness directory. So if you go to the wellness directory, at www.yourpurespark.com, you'll see that, for me, wellness is not just only clinical, right? It's not just only going to see a therapist and taking meds. It was actually my therapist here in Boston that suggested I go to a yoga class not too far from where I lived. I'm not sure if anybody on here is from Boston, but I live in Roxbury, and right next door to Roxbury is this area called Jamaica Plain. And so I went to the yoga studio, and I thought to myself, I don't know why this lady is suggesting I do this, but I'm going to try it because at this point, I just want to feel better, and I'm willing to do anything to feel better. Honestly, I am. I want to feel better. I want to be well. And so I went to yoga, and I was like, okay, I don't know how this downward dog is going to help a depression symptom, but I'm going to do it. And after the hour and 15-minute class was over, I felt like I had more space. Through all those twists and turns and stretching, I felt like I had more space for my feelings and emotions to kind of flow through. And it also made my therapy sessions a lot better because now I'm able to process as I continue to go to yoga. I'm able to process a lot of things that I wasn't able to process before. Like all the wisdom that I shared at the beginning, looking back, being able to say I could see this for what it is, came during that time when I was going to yoga class and I was processing, um, you know, in therapy. So much so to the point now where I no longer attend therapy, but I think therapy is valuable. Not saying that it's not. Um, I focus more on yoga and nutrition, taking walks, really working with creating boundaries to make sure I'm living a life that's sustainable for me. Something that I could have never done when I was in corporate America. Create a boundary? What? I'm afraid to say no to anything. I don't want to get fired. So But now I can do that. And the younger me inside is screaming, thank you so much for protecting me, you know? But so now what PureSpark is doing is we have this website where wellness practitioners that live in the Boston area that are Black sign up. You know, they pay either a monthly subscription or an annual subscription to be listed. Um, and we collaborate so much with different organizations throughout the Boston area. Really, if you think about it, we're looking to become the Black wellness Google of Boston. So if you're looking for a wellness event or a wellness practitioner, we want to help you, because I do believe that it's so important to find somebody that you can feel comfortable with. Um, at one point, I didn't have a therapist that looked like me. And I realized that during those sessions, I was code switching. And if you don't know what code switching is, I need you to Google it or talk to a Black friend because they're going to tell you. Or if you don't have a Black friend, Google it because there's tons of information out there on what code switching is. But I realized I was doing it in my sessions and I'm like, oh, wait a minute. If I can't feel safe in therapy, no. Um, and so I, know that, healing um is powerful, but you have to be able to feel vulnerable and feel like you can open up to people and really tell them what's on your mind. And also feel like they get you. Like when I say something, you understand what I'm saying. Because if I gotta sit here and explain it, ah, that's tough. Um, and so that's what we're about. And so we have our directory, we have our events listing, which I think is amazing. Most of the events on there are in person. At one point it was like a lot of virtual things because we're closer to like the pandemic times, which I mean, I'm confused, are we still in the pandemic or not? I think we are. But anyway, on our events page we list out all the wellness events that are going on throughout the city. Some of them are free, some of them are paid, you have to pay. But it's just nice to know that there's a one-stop shop if you're looking to find wellness. And that's the gift that we gave, and that was the gift that was born out of the struggle that was my life and my ups and downs. And we have so much that we want to do in the future. We have our own events that we do. We really believe on cross collaborations. So having doulas in the room with yoga teachers, having in the room with therapists, having conversations is so important to us, right? So, for example, at one of our Black wellness mixers that we had last year, we had a doula, which, if you're not familiar with what doulas do, they work with moms who are expecting, and you know, basically they kind of help them through that process. Um, and we had a doula say that, hey, I think I'm working with a mom that's dealing with depression, postpartum depression. Is there a therapist in the room that can help me with this mom? And there was. And she had openings, and they were able to connect, and they were able to collaborate, and they were able to work together. And so when we start to broaden the idea of what wellness looks like, because again, if I'm only focusing on Black therapists and clinicians, that only makes up 2 to 7% of the therapists and clinicians that are out there. That's not enough. We have to really think holistically. Who else can we bring in to help to support? I even consider peer support specialists, right, as wellness practitioners. If you've been through something and you can help somebody else along on their journey, absolutely. Um, and so we have these networking events that we do on a quarterly basis. We also have wellness walks that we do starting in the spring, summer, and fall. That bring people out to nature because we realize and understand how valuable and underutilized, I would say, nature is. Um, and just being able to be in community with other people, get some fresh air, um, immersed in the sounds of birds chirping. I had one woman say to me, I felt like I just went on a little mini vacation. And I'm like, I know, isn't that nice? 15 minutes out of the city, and you're in the woods. Um, and so just kind of showing people that, wellness doesn't have to cost a million bajillion dollars. Like you don't have to um, spend all this money to take certain classes or whatever. Like you can kind of do some of these things on your own and for free. And my goal and my role as PureSpark is to help to guide you along on that journey. So I know it's 3:40 and I want to make sure people have time to ask questions. So I'm gonna pause it right there. And I see that there's like, I don't even know if those are questions, comments, or whatever, but I see, did we have any questions?
I will ask for people to raise your hand. If you have a question, you can put it in the chat or you can raise your hand and we will take you off of mute. But there are comments in the chat regarding people feeling so honored to hear your story today. It's a powerful message. And someone commenting on boundaries around spending a lot of time educating providers, which is fine, but they lose time for themselves. So they can empathize with what you were saying. Also, someone commented on code switching and that how it could apply to people with mental health diagnosis of any color. And they think there's a code for every marginalized group that you can identify with. And it just gets more complex with more intersections.
Yeah, definitely.
Any questions? Alicia.
Good afternoon. Hi. First of all, thank you so much for sharing your story. It takes great courage to be vulnerable that way. And thank you for that. And I also feel honored just to hear your story. Currently located in Albany, Georgia, which is like a small town in South Georgia. And I am the director of what we call the Change Center, which is an addiction recovery support center. It's peer-led, peer-run, it's yes. And so everyone that works here is a person in long-term recovery. And we know that recovery is not just substance use disorder, but also mental health challenges, right? And so oftentimes it's co-occurring. And I heard you talk about this wellness walk. And I'm curious. Right now we have someone that comes in and does mixed fit. Everything that we do here at the Change Center is completely free, right?
Nice.
So we have a woman who comes in and she does mixed fit, which is kind of like Zumba, aerobics, dance, kind of a mixture of things. I would like to know if you have any ideas, because I heard you say it doesn't have to cost a lot of money, and it doesn't. Other than this wellness walk, like what can I bring to this center for our peers to do in as it pertains to health and wellness? I know that it's a whole, like we look at the whole person, right? So it's not just about medication and it's seeking therapy. It's about, educating ourselves on the foods that we eat and what we put in our system, in our bodies, because, garbage in is going to be garbage out. Like I can't figure out why I'm sluggish and I want to take a nap after after lunch and I just have no energy, and you know what I mean? So whole healthy foods and things of that nature. But do you have any suggestions? Like what can we bring here? Like what can we incorporate? I wrote down wellness walk because we're gonna do some of that. But what else would you
Yeah,
are you able to?
I mean, there's so much, right? Like when I think about the world of wellness, I mean, my mind, like I could write a list for days. I think one place you could look for inspiration is if you look on our website at our events page. There are like event photos from like the events that we've done in the past, but then there's like upcoming events, and you can kind of look to see kind of like what events are happening around in and around Boston with different organizations. I don't know how many of these things would be low cost. And maybe there might be some grants that you could go after to cover the cost, or maybe you might be able to collaborate with local colleges. I don't know any colleges that's in your area. But if there are colleges around there, maybe there's like some partnerships that you can do there. But I mean, one thing that I think is super low cost is like vision boards, right? Creating the life that you want to live through imagination, getting magazines donated from somebody, and creating a vision boards. There's journaling. I'm not huge on journaling or writing. I'm more of an orator. I love to talk, as you could probably tell. Like, I talk a lot. So instead of writing in journals, I record voice notes every morning after I meditate. That's another one. Meditation, working with a yoga studio or, meditation folks in the area that can come in and guide you along on the meditation. There's just so much. I mean, just getting creative and thinking outside the box. There's art therapy. Again, I feel like I can go on and on. But if you want to take a look again at on our website, for example, you can kind of look and see what we've done in the past, and then what other people that we collaborate is doing kind of ongoing throughout the year. Hopefully that helped.
So thank you so much. Did I pronounce your name correct, Alicia? Okay, awesome. Next we have Jennifer.
Hi, good afternoon. Thank you. Thank you. Your story is more than inspiring. I feel like thank you for sharing it, because I feel there's a lot of people that have gone through, transformations, but they still don't believe that they can make a difference by sharing it. I have gone through one myself as well. I'm a recovered addict, 20 years that I recover on my own, following exactly what you shared. Oh my God, I'm so sorry. That was my dog. Exactly what you shared, just going back to basics, meditation, going inward. And now I currently work for the Center for Youth Advocacy and Wellbeing at the University of Tennessee. And I work in connection with a lot of families, and especially the youth related that require a lot of services. We connect families with services, right? Mostly related to health, mental health, but not exclusively and not only limited to this. So my question is, I am a firm believer of everything that you've shared in terms of like options that are, like outside, like more non-orthodox in terms of, meditation. And I'm a true believer of that. I know that helps from lived experience and from seeing it in a lot of people. So I'm with you on that. Now, my thing is how to how to break that stigma on those families. If it was up to me, I would build workshops for kids that would just entirely do that. And, like in terms of like natural options. And I know it would make a huge change on them, not only on them, but also on the parents. But it's so hard, when you bring those topics, people tend, especially I'm originally Argentinian, so I am also a minority. So it's very it's kind of like a huge barrier when you bring this to this type of Black African American, Hispanics. How did you navigate that process? Or what suggestions do you have?
Yeah, I mean, so for me, I've grown up in a family that dealt with a lot of things, right? Like my father is someone who lived with and is living with substance use disorder himself. And I have my sister who I mentioned, who's currently in the hospital, who's living with bipolar disorder. And I will say, from a very young age, I really worked hard on trying to bring my family members along with me on this wellness journey, right? And what I realized as an adult, mind you, this is my family, not work, so it's a little bit different. But what I realized as an adult is that not everybody's ready and not everybody wants to, and I can't force them, because that's not real healing. If I got to force somebody to do something, that's destructive to me, I believe. I want people to join me who are inspired, who believe that healing is possible, and all of those things. And so that's why it's really important for me to share my story through this, because I want them to know, kind of like that the hair loss campaign. Like, I'm not only the founder, but I am somebody that does this as well. Like, know that, like, I'm not talking down at you. Like, this is something that I do too, and I'm sharing with you a platter. Now, what you decide to pick and use and choose is up to you. It's not up to me. I don't have authority to tell you what to do and what not to do. But my goal is that through my story sharing, through me presenting to you these different ideologies and thoughts, and showing and doing these things alongside with you, that you will choose something that works for you. Not everybody's going to want to do therapy. Not everybody's going to want to take medication. Not everybody's going to want to meditate, because I'll say something about meditation that I think probably goes against the grain, is that it's difficult, I think, to sit with yourself and your thoughts. I think, there's things that can come up that you might not be prepared for, that might put you in a certain mood, in a certain space, and you got to be ready for that. And I don't know if everybody's necessarily ready to confront themselves and to just sit in silence with themselves. I think it's one of the hardest things to do. And so rather than this is just me personally saying like, hey, you got to do this, like, this is going to help you, it helped me, da da da. I'm just going to show it to you. I'm just going to share it with you. I might also talk about how our ancestors use this as indigenous people. This is coming from us, right? We just forgot. And I'm just guiding you back to the things that we used to do, before capitalism and Western civilization confused us. And if that's not compelling enough, maybe one day you'll see it. Maybe one day you'll see it as valuable and you'll join me. But I'm wishing you well on your journey. And I'm not going to force anybody to do this work. So, anybody that comes to our events, that checks out our website, that reaches out to me, they're people that really want healing, and those are the people that I'm going to disperse my energy to work with, because what I've learned both in my father and my sister's situation, who I love and who I'm supporting, I can't force them to do anything they don't want to do. My dad is almost 80, and this is something he's been dealing with since I was born.
Thank you for sharing that.
Thank you so much.
Any additional questions? I see in the chat, someone says, thank you for sharing your story and saying that you don't like journaling and then providing an alternative. Someone says, thank you very much. Thank you so much for sharing and bringing more perspective and other insight than just therapy. Hearing direct lived experience is important and greatly appreciated. Very happy you're here and found so much more purpose for your life. Blessings to you and your family and continued healing journey. I see meditation, vision boarding, journaling, sports, yoga, walking, helping others, tutoring, joining organizations are all self-help activities. I don't care for meditation. I agree with you. Everyone doesn't benefit from everything, including therapy. Lotta, thank you for your journey. Someone shared earlier. Here we go. Thank you for telling your story. It's super powerful. I am Japanese, and people who are Japanese don't share their struggles and concerns. Thank you for being brave.
Thank you.
And someone else elevated self-care and being able to talk and share their feelings and concerns can be helpful to themselves and wonderful people that they work with. Additional questions? See a lot of gratitude in the chat.
Appreciate it. I'm thankful to be here and share it. I'm glad that people got something out of it.
Yes, yes, yes. And I'm going to put the link to our survey again. If you are interested in continuing to have these sessions, please make sure that you complete the survey. And also, if you have questions, additional questions or thoughts around this topic or additional topics, please be sure to include that in the survey as well. And Nieisha will receive a link to the survey, so she'll be able to see the comments and things like that to further the conversation in at PureSpark and around. So, Alicia.
Okay, last question. I'm sorry.
No
I know
worries.
that July is BIPOC Awareness Month, and I should probably get with you outside of this to ask you about, are you available for like Zoom
Yeah.
platforms and things of that nature, like lunch and learns, and to be like a speaker for those things? If someone were interested in asking you to come and share your story on a different platform, what would be the best way for us to reach out to you to do that?
Yeah, you can do you mind putting the link to the website in the chat? Okay, yeah.
Oh, I do have
Yeah,
that.
so
Yes,
exactly.
I'm actually
That's
on it.
just that. Yep. That's it right there.
Okay, perfect.
Yeah, this is part of the work that I enjoy doing. You know, it's part of the way that I fund the organization, is through these types of things like speaking engagements. Honestly, it's my favorite part of the job. But yeah, in addition to running the organization, I do a lot of speaking engagements. So if you're interested, you could just feel free to reach out to me and we can connect.
Thank you.
Awesome. Thanks so much. So we are about at time. We're going to open it up. If we see if we have just one more question.
Yeah, and if people are afraid to ask here, but still want to ask a question, feel free to email me. Use that
Yes.
email, info@yourpurespark.com. I normally get back to people within a day. So feel free to use that. And I'd be happy to answer any questions that you have. But it was so nice speaking to everybody and hearing your reflections and your comments and your questions. And again, like my only hope is that somebody got one little thing out of this that they can take with them and share back with their communities. And I just hope that it was valuable of your 1 hour that you spent here. So thank you.
Awesome. Thank you so much again, Nieisha, for your phenomenal time with us today. I can't say it's presentation because it's your life. And so thank you for your time and for sharing your story and your courage and your passion to change the world and to give people what they need and alternatives that are, I don't call them non-traditional, I call them innovative. And like you said, that are things that we and our ancestors have done. So thank you for doing that. And hopefully everyone received your information in the chat. We'll also send it out on the slide deck. Thank you again. If we can give Nieisha a virtual round of applause, that would be wonderful.
Thank you.
Awesome.
Appreciate
Thanks,
it.
everyone. Have a great day. Take care.
Bye. Take care.